Right. Well, before we get too deep, looks like Lonnie's already started. Right.
I didn't want to miss anything because last time I didn't start it soon enough.
Right, right.
I can edit it out. So
well, I'll let you introduce him then.
All right. So Tom Wayne is joining us tonight. Good to meet you. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So Fargo, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I was trying to catch what you were saying there. So Fargo, North Dakota.
Yep.
How long have you been in Fargo?
I moved up to the Fargo Moorhead area back in '99. So I've been up here over 20 years now. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, originally from Arkansas, small cattle farm down there, but yeah, it's quite the difference here and there.
I bet.
The population, there's some similarities with that, but as far as weather, it's brutal in the winter here.
Yeah. Well, quick story. Let's see, it was February of 2020. I booked a fishing trip for Devil's Lake, go ice fishing. And I left Washington, it was 40, 43 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Got into Fargo and stepped off the plane, and it was 43 below with 30-mile-an-hour winds. I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Isn't that crazy? It's like a 70-degree difference from where you were.
Oh, yeah. It was cool, though, because, I got to go out in one of those, gosh darn it.
Snow bear?
Snow bear. Yeah. I still haven't been in one. Maybe a guy invited me this year. Maybe I'll try it. Being from Arkansas, it's been real hard for me to get on the ice, but.
Oh, yeah. I bet. It's a cool deal, man. I mean, you're out there in a T-shirt,
Yeah, that's
the heater going and drop it down. And now the first day I wasn't. They actually took me out and set me in a little hut. That's okay.
You haven't done the Lake Winnipeg thing yet, Tom?
I've not been up there. No. For ice fishing or open water.
That's before I moved out here back in about 2007, I started going up there and actually fishing with Aaron Weeb. 2007, before everybody started going up there, and it was amazing. I'm sure it's still amazing, but it actually went from nobody out there to thousands of people, kind of like Red Lake in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's a blast catching them big walleyes, and a lot of them will hit. Say you're fishing in 13 feet of water with 4 feet of ice, and you're jigging a rattle trap that you can hit the bottom of the ice, and these fish are actually coming and hitting you right under the ice, and it's violent.
Crazy.
I would definitely recommend if going up to Lake Winnipeg, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that would show you the ropes on. And it's ice is never safe, but you go with somebody that's is experienced. That they should be able to put you in a little bit of a comfort zone at least, because it can be nerve-wracking if you're not familiar or comfortable with it.
Yeah, I've done it a few times, and I've been on Red Lake, like you said, in those the ice rentals up there and stuff like that. And when you got 2 feet of ice under you, I feel safe with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not like here where you get out and you got about 4 inches of ice.
Yeah,
in some spots, and it's like, ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so let's just dive into this. So you've been killing it on the circuit the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, I've been trying.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna throw this at you right away.
Yeah.
What's with the trolling thing, man?
What's with not trolling, you mean?
Yeah. You got all those snacks to eat.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I got a tournament coming up here, in a week, and I have those snacks ready to go just in case, because this is traditionally a trolling lake, and we got, this is the championship on the AIM circuit, and that we're going to next, and just like last year, going into Lake of the Woods, it's traditionally always been one trolling, and hopefully we can crack that code again on Lake Superior and see if we can find something casting. But no, I did do that. It was Green Bay. I wasn't on anything, and I did the trolling thing. I have the stuff to do it. I got all mismatched planer boards and stuff. It's funny actually looking at my stuff. But I had to try it because nothing else was working. But yeah, the snacks are important.
You know as good as I do. Going against the grain and doing something different than everybody else, it can really pay off. And I got to think that that's how you've got to where you've got. I mean, following the typical format, how everybody does everything, and here you are. Like, let's go back to that lake. I remember listening to one of your podcasts you did with somebody, and I was blown away how you figured out that bite on Lake of the Woods. I mean, that with throwing the big baits, seeing that the fish were there, and then dialing them in. That's a phenomenal strategy. And how did you figure that out?
Well, I mean, I was up there, I think 2 full days, and that was my first trip up there too. And my team partner, Nate Wolski, he was trying to put together a trolling bite. He's really good. We're both new to this, but he is really good at trying to find something that I'm not doing just in case, and to see if it'll work. And so I'm out there, and I literally see this school of saugers on my side scan. At first, I didn't know it was saugers, but I saw a pretty tight school, big school, and I threw a small bait down there and caught one, and saw that it was a 6 or 7 inch sauger or something like that. Threw it back, and it had been a couple of days since I caught anything, so I caught another one about the same size. And then on that third cast, and this is in 30-some feet of water, and on that third cast, and it's windy out, I'm using very, very light baits like I do, and I threw it out there, and the school kind of like separates, like poof. I saw them just like shoot off, and like what just happened there? There's no way they could have seen that. And if you're familiar with Lake of the Woods, it's not clear water, so I'm like, weird. So I'm sitting there, and I pan around, and I see just one giant mark, and there's some big sturgeon up there too.
Yeah.
It's a big sturgeon and big northerns. And so I saw a big mark, and I was like, oh, they ran away from that one. And curiosity always, I cast it at that mark, and it was a big walleye. It was a 28 incher. And so I'm like, oh, so then that was my first one. It was a giant. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go around and see if this is a pattern. And I'm a big structure related angler. So if I'm fishing a rock pile and you've got a boulder sitting there the size of your boat, I'm going to cast at that, because generally there's going to be a big fish sitting by it. Even though with forward facing sonar and stuff now, those fish can be sitting so tight to it, you're not going to see it. So by throwing a bigger bait down there to get those fish to separate from it, then you can figure out how to cast something back in to make them eat. So being there's no structure on Lake of the Woods, that's kind of what I had in my mind, that I'm going to use those schools of sauger as my structure, like a living structure, I guess. So I went around, and it took me a long time. I finally found some other schools of them. And I remember attending the Bassmaster Classic as a fan down in Houston, Texas, on Lake Conroe, and seeing Steve Kennedy, one of the Bassmaster elites, longtime Bassmaster elite. And he was throwing a big swim bait, or one of those big top water, like glide bait type things. And he, every now and then, he'd burn it back in and cast a smaller finesse plastic back out. And, the live cameras in the boat, and one of the announcers asked him, like, Steve, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just getting these bass to show themselves, and I'm casting something back in there they'll actually eat. And he goes, I can cover more water like that. So for me, it was just about getting them to show themselves out of that mud, or that's where they were just sitting waiting till, I don't know, they're just waiting to grab a big bite from one of those saugers. And so I would just throw either a big crankbait or a big hollow body tube swim bait, hollow body swim bait down there with like a 3/4 ounce jig head on it and just slow cast way past the school and slow roll it right to the edge of them and just give it some, aggressive action. Let that school kind of get a little bit crazy, and then pan around, and I would be able to, most of the time I'd see a big mark come up, and I would just have to figure out how to catch it. Now, not every one of them would bite that I saw, not even close, but we had to put on the miles. And in that Lake of the Woods weather, especially on day 2 of that championship, there wasn't all moving around. We were fortunate to just have, some schools lined up basically. So where we could we made a long run. Probably we shouldn't have. We were like 6 and 7 foot waves out there, but we got a lot of looks. I've got a lot of guys now that I'm kind of been into this a little bit in the last year or so, come up to me now and tell me that when they saw me out there, they're like, Tom's an idiot. He has no clue what's going on out here. But now you see weights changing. You see people fishing like us. Like, it's crazy now. Before we were the only ones standing in the front of our boats. Now almost every tournament I go to, it's like 95% of the guys are standing in front of their boat already. So it's kind of cool to see that we've kind of changed things in a certain way, and I still can't believe it, that I'm part of that, and it's just been awesome.
Well,
go ahead.
It takes a lot of patience to fish the way you fish.
Yeah, a lot. So like I said, we didn't catch every fish we saw doing that. People assume that with what I've got dialed in, then I'm just going to go out there and wreck them every single time, or every single fish I see on my sonar, I'm going to catch. No, right. That's not the case. It's either hero or zero, and that's exactly why I am not in the NWT championship this year. If I, on the Detroit River earlier this year, the first tournament of the year, I resorted to doing what everybody does on that river. And I think looking back now, that's what hurt me. And because I should have, typically what I do, I look at what the locals do, and I do a variation of that. But, sometimes it's quite different, but when it works, it works. But when it works, I'm only getting 5 or 6 bites a day. Sometimes
the right 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, for example, I've been on our AIM circuit in the last 2 years. I bet we've caught less fish. We have less fish on our cards probably than probably anybody. It's crazy. Like, on Leech Lake this year, we had 7 fish. On Leech Lake in 2020 when we won, we had 7 fish. Lake of the Woods, 7 or 8 probably. But that's the thing. I mean, it's just patience. So there's times when Nate and I, or when I'm fishing the NWT, I'm like, it gets down to the wire. I'm like, oh God, I have 1 fish. What am I going to do? What are we going to do? But it's mental. The tournament, as you guys know, the tournament game is mostly mental, and I just make myself grind out doing what I know, and that's the only way I can make it work. I can't run and do what you do. It's not going to work for me. So, yeah, it takes a lot of patience, and next year is going to be a different deal. I've learned so much this year. So
I'm a typical. I've done plenty of crankbaiting. That's a very popular thing. So I've had live scope for about 3 years, and I had Panoptics before that, and it took me a while to start using it. And I learned right away, and I had some friends that would buy it and get rid of it because they said, this doesn't work. And I said, trust me, it works, but this is nothing like you've ever used before. And the first time I ever used it, I dropped it somewhere. I have a video on my cell phone. I dropped it with the old Panoptics, and I saw, and that was just more of a blob you would see instead of the nice defined fish. and I'm like, oh my God, there's a fish there. And I caught it, and it was a nice fish, jig and wrap. And so the light switch went on. This has been about 4 years ago since I had that live scope or that Panoptics. But and also you got to have somebody fishing with you that has confidence in what you're doing, because I've seen big fish before, and it's also, like you said, it's burned me before. Like I'm like, this is a 30+ inch walleye. This is what we need to catch. And it's burned me because I wouldn't leave. And then you still have to make them decisions, but I guarantee you're 20 times better at live scope than I am, but I can even tell how big a fish is typically, like if it's a fish worth worrying about. But if I see one that I'm like, that's a 10-pound walleye, and out here on the river, and that's one thing. And I'm hoping you agree with me. Maybe I'm wrong, but live scope is a lot more difficult to use on a river than it is a lake. Matter of fact, on my boat, I actually have it on my back of my Vantage on my boat, so I can spot lock or whatever and look backwards and cast towards them, because it's pretty tough to work current, especially heavy current, with live scope. And so I've had my live scope on the pole, I've had it up front, I've had it everywhere, and I'm constantly moving it myself too for different situations. But I would assume that if it's a fish that you need to catch, whereas let's say you're looking for a 20-inch plus fish, you probably know if it's not a 20-inch plus fish. I'm guessing that you've gotten that good with it that you can get pretty good with your size estimates.
Yeah, and that's where efficiency comes in. So, and you're right, on the river, in heavy currents, on your typical rivers, it's not so much the current itself that dampers your ability to see fish. It's not the cloudy water. It's not the muddy water. It's the fish being tight to the bottom in current. That's all it is to it. I hear people saying, "Oh, you can't see them in moving water." Yeah, you can. Anything, you can't see them in muddy water. Yes, you can. Or, I hear the complaints all the time. Everybody wants their live scope screen to be like perfectly black background. Like, get over it. You look at mine's grainier than anybody's out there. And that's because I have the setting so high because I don't want to miss anything. And, there's tons of people, even buying the new one, the newest versions, that say, "Oh, I bought it, but I think it's in my garage," or "I bought it and I sold it," or "I bought it and, I don't turn it on." It's like, that's fine. They tried it, they didn't like it, but it's because they didn't take the time to use it. And that's the thing. And you're right. It's not all about tournament fishing. Isn't about just going catching a bunch of fish. Like, I'll be sitting at weigh-ins and I hear people say, "Oh, we were on this school of 40 or 50 walleyes yesterday, and today they moved. But yesterday they weighed in 8 pounds." It's like, and whoever's leading caught 40. So it's like, that's good, but live scope and tournament fishing isn't all just about finding fish and going to catch every single fish you see. So you have to get good at finding big fish, knowing what they look like, how big they are, and learning that in all different depths. So like, you see a mark in 8 feet of water, it's going to look significantly that same fish will look significantly different in 30, 40, 50, 60 feet of water. So a lot of people don't realize it. And the more and more I talk to people, they think that, "Oh, I never see fish." I literally think they think that they're going to see an actual walleye swim across the screen with scales and its eyeballs and all that. I think that's what they think. Right. I didn't want to believe it right away, but I really do think that's what they think, and they get rid of it. But, but yes, I am still learning. There's a lot that I want to utilize that I haven't gotten to utilize yet this year, because I don't like trying to go too far outside the box during a tournament where I'm pre-fishing. I need to use like really good off downtime to dial stuff in. But the stuff that I'm learning with the new LVS 34 and the settings and stuff like that is just, it's going to be big. I think there's a lot that we still haven't seen, and to be able to utilize it in rivers with some different settings, I think I'm excited. The NWT put us on 3 rivers this year. They like to say, they like to cater to everybody's strengths, and they put us on 3 rivers and 1 lake, and it is what it is. Rivers are not my thing, but for the fact that I had to fish so many rivers this year, I'm very thankful for it, because it forced me to learn. And me and my buddy Sean Grams is a rookie on the NWT this year. I met him last year. He was my co-angler, and he's a good friend of mine, diesel mechanic out in Wisconsin. Him and I put together something on the Mississippi River on Prairie du Chien this year that's going to be very interesting when we dial this in. He's a troller. I'm not. Let's just say this: he put all his trolling rods away the day before the tournament and was utilizing something that we just talked about, and he caught some really good fish. But that slot limit over there is 20 to 27 that we couldn't keep. So he couldn't keep any that he caught, but they were all good quality fish using a technique out there that I'm excited to get on a river next year and try. So all with the help of live scope too, not necessarily seeing fish, but seeing what we need to see and throw on the right baits. So
Sure.
Looking forward to showing that next year.
The conditions you had this year with Detroit, and I was actually, I fished the Chamberlain tournament as a pro.
Oh, nice.
Man, especially day 2.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea where you fished, but I fished pretty close to the White River. And when that wind came in, I actually blew my motor. I lost oil pressure on my brand new boat. And I had a good day 1, and I lost my motor on day 2 about an hour and a half into it. And, that wind came in, I'm guessing, I think if I remember right, it was probably around 9 or 10 o'clock. And we'd been throwing back some 16, 17 inches that morning when my low pressure oil pressure alarm went off.
Oh, no.
And that wind came in right when that happened. And it was pushing me into that west shore. And my kicker motor, I was doing everything I could to keep my boat out of shore, which I did. Man, I had waves. I have a 2175 Lund with a 400 horse, and I had waves coming over my boat.
It was crazy out there.
And that was as bad a situation I've ever been in. And man alive. So you did not have very good conditions for your style of fishing, especially the first 2 tournaments of the year.
Yeah, and I can't complain. The Chamberlain tournament, that wind, I've never been fishing in a wind that strong. And we were fortunate to be on a river, not somewhere like Erie or something like that, and be caught out. And that was insane.
It was, man. It was, and we took off. It was flat calm. And
Yeah.
I was concerned. I'm like, every time I've been in an event where it's like flat calm and you're seeing the wind prediction being 40 plus, I'm like, I honestly was thinking, why are we fishing today?
Yeah.
This could get really bad here. And it did get really bad.
It did.
Man, that's a situation that nobody should ever be in, because and this is a small, narrow river, and I had waves coming, 5-footers coming over my bow. So like you say, I mean, imagine if we were on a lake, and it came in so quick.
Mm-hmm.
It was like
Real
a light
quick.
switch where that stuff came in. And I'm telling you, my alarm went off right when that wind picked up. And we were pulling lead core, and we're pulling 3-ways with some like 6-ounces on the inside rods. And then we were pulling boards out for the other ones. And when that wind came in, my alarm went off. Of course, both of my 6-inch 3-way rigs went into my kicker motor. So we had to rip them out of that first.
Yeah.
While that wind was pushing us into the shore. Holy cow, man.
I know.
Yeah, so that was, and I'd never been to South Dakota. I'd never fished out there, and it was a fun place to fish.
Mm-hmm.
But man alive, every day except for one day, it was just brutal wind.
Yep. It was.
What a tournament that was.
It was. And Detroit too, it was just cold over there. We did have one blow day over there. It got bad, but it was just so cold over there. And that's beside the point. I should have caught one fish over there. If I did the math right, if I would have caught just one little 1 pounder, I'd be in the top 20, I think, angular of the year points. And then now I'm not even in the championship. So it's like that's all it takes, you know. So
you nearly won the championship. Were you in first or second on the? You got second overall, right? Last year.
Last year, yeah. Last year was my first year on the NWT, and after day 1, I was leading, and then day 2 and 3, Eric McCoy caught those giants and passed me. So
he's been on fire too. I mean, there's and now it's Dwayne Jelm. Like there's a few guys that have just been smoking it, and it's cool to see some new. It really is cool to see new blood.
Right.
Honestly, I like seeing guys walk in and kick the door open, and you're definitely doing that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a good thing though, because you were just talking that you're fairly new to it. So what got you hooked into, let's say, the competitive walleye scene, not just fishing in general?
Winning. That's what it was because what got me into walleye tournament fishing was in 2020 with COVID, the Bassmaster Opens got canceled and rescheduled that year, and the schedule was more condensed, so then I just couldn't make it happen. I mean, I was looking at tournaments all across the South and the East Coast of the United States, and I was like, I can't make that happen that short amount of time. So then I hesitated, but I did cancel my season. But then I picked up a mid-season. It was in July, Leech Lake in Minnesota. Leech Lake, you talk to any tournament guys, they either love it or they hate it. And the more I talk to them, most people hate it. But it was close to home. And first I thought it was a bass tournament, but it ended up being an AIM walleye tournament. And I was like, decided last minute after.
How did you get that confused?
Well, no, somebody told me. So it was somebody at one of the campgrounds. They said, "Oh, I heard there's a professional bass tournament coming to Minnesota, to Leech Lake." And I'm like, "No." I knew better because I follow Bassmaster and the MLF and stuff pretty closely, and I knew nobody was coming up to Leech. But I looked it up that night in the camper. I Googled it, and it was a walleye tournament. And at that time, I just passed. I was like, "No, I'm not going to do it then." But then I met my new neighbor, Nate Wolski, at the campground, and I was like, so, sitting by the campfire having a couple of beers, and I'm like, let's do a tournament. You want to be my partner? I need somebody in the boat with me to make it a team. And so that's how it started. So then we won that, and that's how it got me it just switched my whole mindset to like, maybe we're onto something. And then after the second tournament, I said, okay, I think we're onto something. Then when we won the Masters Walleye Circuit tournament, then that year, then I was like, okay, the next year, 2021, I'm just going to go all out and concentrate on just keeping this ball rolling. And it's getting harder and harder to do that because, like I said, you see people standing up front, their boats now. Like I was pretty much the only one doing it just a short 2 years ago. It's hard to stay that step ahead because people are going to catch up. And so it's hard for me to try to, I'm pushing my mind all the time to be like, what else can I do? What else can I push myself to find? What little subtle nuances can I find in these lakes and rivers to keep ahead, how can I stay in that top 10?
So do you think that the success you had early could hinder you as far as, let's say, if you don't have that same success within the next couple of years where you're just like, okay, because I heard you talk about this once before where you were saying, obviously winning is good. I mean, it's great. That's what everybody wants to do. That's why you get into the tournaments. But if you don't do well, and this is where I've hit this many times because I've been fishing tournaments out here forever. And I get to the point where, even my partner will say, well, why do you look so angry? And I'm like, because we suck.
Yeah.
We're not doing well,
Yeah.
and, I get to the point where it's like, man, maybe this isn't my thing.
Yeah.
So then I kind of go back and say, well, give it a few days. The next thing I know, okay, we're going to do the next tournament.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's exactly what I said. Like, you get to, you're in pre-fishing or whatever, and you're struggling, or you leave a place like Detroit and you're like, why do I put myself through this? The mental game of it. Like, it's nice to win. Yes, it's nice to have those good finishes. But in reality, I know that nobody stays on this kind of a streak that long or long at all. You even professional bass fishing, you got all the big names. Some of them have, good runs and they got a lot of momentum. But what we're doing right now is different, where it is a mix of technology and reading strategy and reading the body of water. So technology is not all of it. That's just a big tool. So like in a river, we had a really good tournament on the Mississippi River this year on the AIM circuit, and that was when I first had the LVS 34 put on, and I actually did a Instagram reel showing the LVS 34 in my Garmin's, and right before that tournament. So a lot of people assumed that was the key, but we didn't see a single fish we caught live scope. We didn't see any of them, but what we could see was structure, and seeing underwater structure. Not, we can look at the shoreline of a river and stuff and be like, oh, there's a current break, but what I learned there on the river was I found a current break underwater that we couldn't see with our eyes, and that it was very small, as the size of my boat, and I saw some action on the top with some shad and stuff bouncing off the rocks. Something was chasing them, so I just put it together and like, okay, there's something there. I went to look at it with my electronics, and like, sure enough, there's a nice little current break where these spawning fish can chase these bait, or just sit there and rest and let the bait come to them. And it worked out. It was just a magical day. But that's what I'm saying. It's not all about the electronics. You still have to, and that's where I'm hoping I can continue this momentum, is by just paying attention. So I find myself staring so much at my electronics, I don't get to like enjoy nature anymore. But I've had 2 tournaments this year where if I wasn't using my eyes and looking at the water and my surroundings, I wouldn't have won these tournaments. Mississippi River and the national championship on Miltona. If I wasn't paying attention to the actual water. So that's the thing. That's where I need to keep, I think I can, if I'm going to keep an edge, is combining all of that and just keeping it in my head to stay patient and learn fish behavior and pay attention. That's it.
You're responsible for the sales of quite a few White Crawdad plastics, I'm sure.
I heard that.
That was pretty cool. I've tinkered with the crawdads myself out here over the years, and I've kind of given up on it. And then I heard your story on that tournament, and I ordered about $150 worth of crawdad fish from Paul Cruz. I don't know if you ever heard of Paul Cruz, but oh man, that guy makes some amazing plastics. So I haven't got them yet, but I can't wait, because there's like right now where I live, the walleye you're catching are just puking up crawdads.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's it.
And I'm pulling whatever, I'm pulling plastics, like usually like just a grub on a slow death and an orange one, and they're hitting them. But I'm going to go out there and this is where you're having the bass fishing background. So I've actually talked to one of my bass fishing buddies. I'm like, hey, I need you to come fishing for walleyes with me with this stupid crawdad that I bought because of Tom Wynn, and show me how to rig this thing. And basically he said, well, you're going to Carolina rig it probably. And I can't wait till they get here. But you know, these different tactics that you're exploring, I think that's part of your success is you're going on your own path. And like you said, a lot of people are going to start saying, all right, this guy actually is kicking everybody's butt. So you're going to have some guys following you around. It is going to get tougher for you, but I mean, getting tougher for you right now is not winning, it's getting second. What you've got. So I looked at the aim, I'm going off the top of my head here, but in 4 tournaments, you've got first, fourth, and second, correct?
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, that's
and the national championship mixed in there.
right.
Yeah, just throw that in there.
Yeah, throw that in there.
That's another. Was that first? That was another first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And then the year before, I know you won Cass Lake, right? And you know, I lived in Bemidji, I know Cass Lake, and I remember hearing your story there where you were actually fishing deeper than probably the whole field, and you and Nate found some deep fish, and I think you crushed everybody in that one, didn't you?
Yeah, that was in 2020, and that was our first year, our 3rd tournament ever, 2-day tournament. Yeah, 2-day tournament there, and it was we won and set the tournament 2-day record there. They told us that anyway. So
right, but
yeah, no, it was crazy, and we were fishing deep. It was unbelievable, like deeper than I thought I could ever catch a walleye. Like even the day before the tournament, I wasn't anticipating having to fish that deep. It was just like, where did our fish go? And we went shallow, which was 20, 30 feet. We were fishing like 35, 40 foot range in practice where we found them, and I thought that was deep. I'm like,
right.
For that time of year too, I'm like, most of the surrounding lakes, those fish are in like 7 to 9 feet of water. Right. But on Cass during that time, it was just odd. And apparently they were still shallow, but the big ones we were catching were slid out deep. And so they weren't where we left them. And I was getting panicky. I'm like, where'd they go? We went shallow looking, nothing. So we went really deep and like, oh my goodness, you're sitting right here. And there wasn't a lot of them by any means, but they pulled out. And what I found out was just a couple feet shallower than them were those schools of giant whitefish. And so they were just waiting. And so and then that was in 2020. So in 2021, last year on Cass Lake, same time of year, everything. We got 3rd place, out of first by a pound exactly, I believe. But we got 3rd place, and all of our fish came at 8 feet of water. So see, that's the difference from year to year. Why? And Leech Lake 2020 caught them deep when we won. 2021, when we won on Leech Lake, we caught them in 8 to 12 feet of water. This year, we caught them deep again. Same time of year, same everything. But that's the thing. People assume, oh, they're doing good because it's all the same lakes. That it helps because you're familiar with the lake, but these lakes are only
find them.
Yeah, you still got to find them, and these lakes are only new to us. They were all new to us just 2 years ago. So I think that's also an advantage for us. We don't have that much history, so then we are like not afraid to go like look for new stuff. And like you said, it's hard to hide now. It's hard to. I made a Instagram post the other day just joking, like, I got a blue boat, and how do you be inconspicuous? And I said, use a small net. And so but it is hard now. Like it's a little bit, it's humbling to say the least, but sometimes frustrating when, I'm out there and on this weird off the wall spot, and then in pre-fishing and look up and there's like 4 people like idling around acting like they're scanning. It's like, it is what it is. I just moved. I don't have to have a spot. I just go somewhere else.
So speaking of that, so I didn't realize it was you until after I went by you, and I was thinking, who the heck was that? So I'm trying to remember the name of the bay. Which
Chamberlain?
I can't. Yeah, but it wasn't the one that you launched at, but there's another bay there was a lot of boats in that bay. And there was one day where I was back there and everybody was back there pre-fishing. And it was one of the days where well, I don't remember if it was windy out in the main river, but anyway, I was pulling cranks around and I went by you and I kind of, like a typical tournament guy.
Yeah.
You're kind of like not, you're not in the mood to talk. At least I'm not, but you actually said you made a little wave at me and I did the same thing. And I'm like, God, was that Tom Wynn? And I kind of looked back and I seen you were live scoping one of them brush piles that were in that one bay. And I'm like, God, I think that's Tom Wynn. And I'm like, why was I such a jerk and didn't say, hey man, nice, you know what I mean? But I didn't, it was after the fact I was trying to figure out, and it was you. Yeah. Because I actually ran into, I know one of the guys, his name is Ben Teets.
Yeah, Ben, he's in Fargo too, yeah.
Yeah, I said, hey, what kind of boat does Tom have? And he said, yeah, he's in here. I'm like, okay, I thought that was him, but I didn't, I didn't put two and two together. And I think I think you actually posted, it might have been that day or the next day, you caught a bunch of crappies.
Yeah.
Is that,
yes.
So he's out there crappie fishing and we're all trying to, that's how confident he is. He just found some crappies and he said, well, heck with it, I'm going to catch some crappies.
Yeah, I caught a walleye off that brush pile, and then I was like, those crappies are sitting there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring some crappies back to Sean Graham's, and we're going to have a fish fry. but no, and I'll never be that guy. That, I don't know what it is with like tournament guys in general, bass or walleye. Like, you see me on the water, you wave, you come talk to me, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to wave at you, whatever.
Right.
It is funny though. Like there's guys like a wave, like big wave, just very visible.
Right. Well, you didn't have nothing. A lot of the guys are pretty, like their boats are pretty well known. You don't have a lot of, I don't remember if you had any stickers on your boat.
No,
and that's where, I know a couple of the guys, but I don't really know anybody. So it took me a while to figure out who you were. Mm-hmm. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, a lot of the guys are not too interested in talking with you. And that can get frustrating for a guy like me that, I try to do one of them tournaments probably every 2 years, because living out here, that's a big investment, running out there and taking time off of work. Mm-hmm. And, there is definitely groups of guys that, stick together and sometimes they don't really seem to want to converse with you, which can get frustrating because you'd want to, but you feel kind of like an outcast with some of the groups out there.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about even a conversation though. I'm just talking about passing them by on on the water and waving, and they just like nothing, just going by. It's like, why? I don't get it. But you think you're cool? Or what?
Yeah, there's some guys that won't even acknowledge. I've come to, and that can get frustrating. And I get it. It's not the time to, like when you go to the driver's meeting, it's not the time to talk and introduce yourself. That's the frustrating part, because you don't get that opportunity very often. Yeah. But most guys do get pretty tight-lipped, the day before the tournament.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, for sure. But I've noticed, being new to this too, like 95% of the anglers in the tour, they're so like you from an outsider looking in, sometimes you're like, oh, they'll never talk to me. They'll never, but God, they're so nice. You know what I mean? Like most of them are just awesome to talk to and get to know and stuff like that. And it's crazy. But it is hard to compete against that team factor, those guys that team up and share information. And I've been asked it's been unbelievable to me that some of the guys that have asked me to team up and join them, it's awesome. Like, yeah, I have a conversation with them and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. But then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, no, I'm not. For me, it's like I did it on my own the first year. The first year, nobody knew who I was. Nobody, talked to me, anything like that, which is fine. I'm pretty quiet anyway. I'm keep to myself, a lot. Like, so I don't, it was awesome. I thought, okay, there's so many more connections I could have, things like that. But I had to remind myself, look, I just had a really good first year. And so I wanted to make sure that I was able to get everything out of it I could on my own first, because I believe if somebody's relying on me, that's a lot of pressure on me. if I'm relying on somebody else, you know, that might make me lazy.
Right.
I don't know. But now I wake up every single morning during pre-fishing for a tournament or a tournament, and I'm giving it everything I got, because it is my own money. It is my own, you know, everything really. And I still have something to prove, not to anybody else. I could care less. At this point, I'm 42 years old. I'm older than most people getting into the sport, and I just want to prove it to myself, and, you know, make, you know, like, just show that poor farm kid from Arkansas, whose parents were both, you know, my dad's an immigrant from Vietnam, and, you know, like, who would have thought my grandparents over there and him, nobody would have thought, you know, he wouldn't have thought his son's going to grow up and be successful at fishing, you know? So
Be a professional fisherman.
yeah, it's crazy. So I got to take advantage of that, just mainly for myself. And if I have something in my mind I want to do, I'm going to go all out and, you know, try to make it happen. So I'm still going to give it a few more years.
42 is young, man. Come on now.
No, I know, but you look at my, you know, the competition, the guys that you mentioned earlier that are on fire right now. I'm double their age. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, that's what I mean about that. And, you know, I get grouped in with the young guys, like, and I say, oh, I'm 42, and they're like, what? But
Yeah,
no.
that doesn't mean that. It really doesn't mean that much. I mean, maybe they have a little more, I don't know, energy than.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
older than you, man. I'm 48, so, you know. But this is one sport that, look at Rick Clunn.
Yeah.
I mean, holy
No,
crap!
exactly.
What is he?
Yeah.
76,
Yeah,
77?
something like that. Yeah.
I watched him win a tournament in the Bass Elites. It hasn't been that long ago, maybe 2 years ago.
In Florida.
So you know,
Yep.
hey, you got plenty of time left. Is that your ultimate goal, by the way? I know I've seen you want to get into the opens. Are you going to try to qualify for the elites? Is that
Yeah,
your ultimate?
it is, but, you know, there's a few things have to happen first. I have to make sure the businesses in town, the nail salons, are doing well and everything, but that's one thing. But then, you know, that's a big commitment, to do the bass circuit. Now, to qualify for the elites, you can't just fish one division. They changed that this year. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
You can't just fish one division and qualify anymore. You have to fish all of them. You have to fish all.
Wow.
That doesn't sound good. That sounds like they're really making it tough for the average guy to get into the.
But too, is because now, like, you can't get into it. Like, whenever, about just 4 or 5 years ago, when you tried to get into an open, you know, a lot of them were filled up full, but you could sometimes squeak into one every now and then, just because, you know, if you wanted to compete and just sign up for a random one, you could sometimes get in. But now the waiting list now, from what I've heard, is in the hundreds, and there's just so much interest in the bass world right now. And I will do it. I will do the full division of the opens to qualify for the elites. I'll do it 1 year. That's what I'm going to do. It won't be next year, but possibly the year after. And just to see where it goes, just to get out of my system. Because it was in 2020 when I actually had time, because my businesses were shut down for 2 months, to be on the lake, is when I started to just dial in these electronics, dial in, you know, my just a lake and lake awareness, and all the subtleties of the lake itself, and, you know, putting together what I did. I didn't get to utilize that when I fished bass. So I'm just curious and I might go back and just, you know, suck real bad, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And, you know, the NWT though is man, they've been good to me, and I'm just curious to see what the schedule is going to be like next year, because, you know, the odds are better with all the rivers this year that it won't be so many next year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another question for you is,
Yeah.
so with the different formats of tournaments, right? So you got your aim series with the catch,
Yep.
record, release,
Yep.
NWT with weight tournaments.
Mhm.
Do you find yourself kind of leaning one direction or the other as far as what you like?
I like both. It's hard to pick, because I like the aim circuit, or the aim format, for the weights, because there's no slot limit. You are just going after giant fish. Like on Prairie du Chien this year, for example, there was fish caught that we found that were very, very quality fish, but we couldn't weigh. So it's like getting a little frustrating. You're like, you know, we got to fish a tournament where you're trying to catch the smallest fish in essence.
Right.
And so I do like the aim format where you're just after 5 giants. Now, I like the NWT stage weigh-in, because there's nothing there. It's just something different about it. You know what I mean? Bringing your fish on the stage and, you know, things like that. So if I had to pick, though, you know, just I like the catch, record, release format. I do. It's better. The fish go right back. You know, like this year we had a couple turns where we were catching them deep, and, you know, I don't just take them and throw them back in the water either. We, you know, Nate and I will spend however long it takes to get that fish to go back down from catching out deep water. I fizz them once, sometimes twice, hold them over the side of the boat to get them to go. But no, I do like the aim format a lot, but there is something to be said about a, you know, tournament that's weighed in on a stage in front of a crowd. It's fun.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I've had this question posed to me before, because we've done a couple that they're not necessarily the aim format, but they were with Fish Donkey.
Yeah.
And so let's say you have somebody that has a 28-inch fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
They weigh it, that fish was 10.5 pounds. Somebody brings in the 30.5-incher, and they weigh it, it's only 8 pounds. So when you go by length, you know, unless you're going by inches, if it's a converted from inches to weight, you know, that 30.5 is always going to be bigger than the 28.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you justify that?
Well, for the fact that the 30-some incher is older, more wise, harder to catch, maybe. Maybe, because like it was just last year on Mille Lacs, same thing. I think the guy who won caught a big 31.5, but he said it was like 6 or 7 pounds, the skinniest thing ever. But he admitted,
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
that's also that is a tough one. But I don't know, because you could still. I don't know. That's tough, because
Also,
I still do think a 31-inch fish, you know, like I said, it's going to be a harder fish to catch. So
well, if it's a 6.5 pound 31-incher, that thing ain't eating much.
no,
right.
it's probably
So
about to die anyway.
I'll say this, you know, so that was a controversy when we were doing the Fish Donkey, but I was running those events, and so after the events I would reflect on it, and it really evened out. Like that guy that had that 30-incher that was skinny and 8 pounds, and then that guy, if you looked at the rest of his bag, it typically evened out. And it, you know, so like I tried to look at the fish, and I feel like I'm pretty good at guessing the fish's size. It really, in the end, didn't change the outcome there was one tournament I remember where a guy did catch some really fat fish that were short that he probably would have moved up a few spots, but it generally evens out. Like in any
does.
tournament, you can't tell how fat a fish is. You can tell the size to a degree, but it generally does even out. But I know Darren Green on Banks Lake a couple years ago, I remember he caught a 32.5-incher that, looking at it, was probably 7.5, 8.5 pounds, and he got credit for like a 14-pounder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, good for him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that was the way that format worked. I hope that someday that somehow both of those equations can evolve. Like for instance, the bass guys, like MLF, you know, they have a judge, which look, for our tournaments, that's not something we can even factor. But, you know, with the way technology keeps changing with a scale, you know, at some point there's probably going to be you know, maybe that guys could weigh their fish. But then I've also heard, talking with like Whit Rush, who won the Governor's Cup in Fort Peck, I asked him about that, and he goes, well, believe it or not, there was a time when people were stuffing lead into the fish and then weighing them, and you have no way of knowing if they're cheating.
Yep,
so
that's true.
And you hope that, I mean, that guys like that get weeded out. And if you're going to win a tournament like that and you're going to go home and be happy, then you got a serious problem. First off.
Exactly.
But, you know, he made a great point when he said that. So I think at some point maybe the technology can evolve to award a super fat 28 incher versus a super skinny 30 incher. But in reality, I think it kind of evens out right now to a degree at the end of the tournament. So, like, we've messed around with it too. And I get what Tom's saying. I mean, you know, the weigh-ins, especially when the water's cold and you're not having to babysit these fish all day, you know, there's a very low mortality rate. But we get into the summer months, that's when, as stewards of the industry, we want to keep these fish alive, you know, and that's when, in my opinion, the catch and release format is the answer to that. So, but I can't, you know, circuits aren't going to do both, right? No. So NWT is not going to do catch and release in their hot tournaments. They're going to pick one way. So, but I do think it's the future of tournament fishing. We're just not at the point where we can make everybody happy yet. But there's probably some technologies out there that none of us are aware of, and maybe it'll correct all that. Whether it's some sort of a algorithm that you can take a photo of the fish and it can actually read the girth. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, like 20 years ago, if somebody was watching this podcast and saying, what are these guys talking about? Like you can tell the size of the fish. Come on. So it'll probably evolve into something else that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, like, or even like, you know, like I like the way to combine the, you know, all the weights, doing the weights in the boat, but then the stage thing, like the Bassmaster has it, Bass Fest in Texas every year on Lake Fork. I think you can keep your biggest one or biggest two.
It has to be over 24 inches to bring it in.
But you can keep it in your live well, bring it to the stage, and the rest of them are just recorded in the boat, you know. So, I mean, there's options. It's just hard to, like you said, to see some of those giants being rocked around in live wells for 35, 40 miles, you know, in the summer. It's you know, it's hard to see that, but we got to do it.
Have you fished Lake Fork?
I have not. No.
I bet that's just something you're just salivating over.
If I wasn't doing this walleye tour right now, I would be definitely spending time at some lakes that I want to, like in Fort Peck in Montana. I'd love to go out there, but I haven't. So
you know, you brought up that name, Steve Kennedy, and I watch everything, and that guy's a character. Like, he is the most. I have another buddy that reminds me of him, but I've seen him set the hook and lose the rod multiple times. Like, and he's a hell of a fisherman. But I saw him almost fall in his boat one tournament where he's fishing some heavy current. But he produces, man. He's a hell of a fisherman.
And you look at his rod and reel and stuff. The reason I like him too, there's like something he bought probably in the 90s. All the stuff. So he just takes care of it and it's good. And he just keeps it. He just keeps using it.
Yeah, he's definitely, when I watch those events, he's like, oh man, I love watching this guy. I want it, you know. I don't know which tournament it was this year, but he set the hook. The rod comes out of his hand. He grabs the rod and he got this big fish. And that reminds me of a buddy of mine, Terry Connolly. Like, that guy, he is the most uncoordinated fisherman, but he's a hell of a fisherman. Like, you cannot deny it. So I could tell lots of stories about Terry, but he's won big fish and he's a big fish guru. And he's done that exact thing where he'll have his reel come off as he's fighting the fish. and having to put it back on his reel, on his rod, and somehow still manage to catch that fish.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's funny.
Guys like that are fun to watch. They might drive you nuts when you're fishing with them, but they're fun to watch. And Steve Kennedy, whenever I see that guy fishing, I'm like, man, I want this guy to win.
Yeah, me too. That's how I am with him too, all the time. He needs to win a big event.
He's been on the edge of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's good. Hey, Tom, I appreciate you coming on. I know it's late where you're at, so we won't keep you for too long. But,
No, anytime. I've just been on the road last couple of days, have some, sponsor trips and stuff. And I have something that I'm working on for this. So it's a project I'll be working on this winter. Has to do with fishing because, like I said, tournaments really can get you so far. So, I've got all kind of ideas. And so if this gets rolling, I'd like to have you guys, be back on with you guys and let you guys know more about it because it's be pretty big.
Anytime you want to come on.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually talking to your Dylan Mackey and Joe Bricko hopefully tomorrow night.
Oh, okay. Nice.
If we can get the schedule figured out, and you guys are battling it right now for first and second.
Yeah. We had a comfortable lead for a little bit, and then on the AIM circuit they let us drop our lowest score, and then next thing you know they're right on our tail. But those guys, Dylan and Joe, anytime they're on the water against us, we're, we don't take our foot off the gas pedal. I mean, they know what they're doing out there. And like I said, there's people who are catching up, people to look out for. And the Minnesota AIM division is no joke. There's a lot of good competition over here. So it's always fun. And Lake Superior is a whole different beast for us. Like I said, it makes me a little bit nervous going into a place that it's always been one trolling, but hopefully we can crack it. If not, somebody did the math for us the other day because I'm really bad with team of the year points and stuff like that. But, it relieved me a little bit knowing that he said we could zero, me and Nate could zero in this tournament, still make the nationals. So finish in the top five. So
yeah, but you don't want to do that.
No, no. It's going to be,
not at all.
We want to do it the other way around. So
what are the dates on that final championship?
On Duluth, next Friday, Saturday.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely be watching.
Yeah.
I know they do a really cool weigh-in that you can watch where they put the pictures. So when you guys come in for them events, you really don't know where you sit because how does it work? I know you probably want to go, but how does it work? Like when you turn your scorecard in with your memory card and the tournament directors will scramble through and figure out which cards we need to verify. And then you go into a tent or a room and they put the pictures of the fish up. Is that how it basically works?
Yeah, basically we check in, turn all of our stuff in, and then there's usually about a 2-hour wait period, 2 to 3 hour wait period between that. And then there's an official time where the tournament director tells us to be at the weigh-in. And a lot of these weigh-ins, not a lot of people come. They're not present, but I know that there's a lot of social media stuff when we can go live, when they can. Right. Yeah. So that's big. So that's basically what it is. And then they announce the top 5 first, and then after that they announce who's in the money. But
and then if you make the national championship, that's the following year, and that first place is a boat, correct?
Yes.
In that event.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Nice.
Yep, a Warrior boat.
Well, we'll be I'll be watching it, man. I'm cheering for you and Dylan. I mean, I haven't talked to Dylan, but like a lot of guys that are in the fishing world, I've had him on my friends list for years. I've been watching him, and you guys are both someone to cheer for. I mean, so may the best man win, right?
No, yeah, I'm all for it, and they're good guys. I'll be happy for them. And here's the thing. I mean, if he beats us, if him and Joe beat us, I mean, I'm doing his fiance's nails for their wedding this September. So I don't want to write my name on her nails. So.
That's hilarious.
No, but thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me and staying up so late for this. And but yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's the sun's still up out here. You're the one that's staying up late,
Yeah,
so we appreciate
exactly.
it. Thanks
I'm
for
used
coming
to
on.
it being late. Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Good luck. Take care.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
You guys too. Bye.